My father taught me many things here. He taught me, keep your friends close, but your enemies close.
Hey folks, welcome to Kaiser's Castle. Thanks for stopping by today. What you heard there was from Axion's Ghost, Papa Parrot's Pizza. And as you guys know, I'm half Dago, so I enjoy that. I have an outstanding treat for you all. And he does an outstanding radio show, and I'm very fortunate to have him. This gentleman is known as the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And he's not unpleasant at all. It's just, he has to face the same facts that I do. That we're older gentlemen and trying to help mentor the youth also and give out the news that's true and that's fit to print. And he comes on with SHR Media Group. And if you get on to SHR Media, that's all you need to type in your search engine on Google. And then once you're on there, Unpleasant Blind Guy, it'll take you. And I will put a link in the description, just like I do with Axion Ghost. So, how's it going there, Unpleasant Blind Guy?
It's going great, Kaiser. I want to thank you for having me on your show. It's definitely an honor and a privilege. We've had a bit of a talk before, of course. I did see something interesting today that I have to just begin with. There's a religious festival in India where apparently they all stand around and throw bull feces at each other. And I looked at that and I said, well, how the heck is this different from Congress? It's like, did the one learn from the other or what? But yeah, it is a privilege to be here and on a busy news week, obviously.
Definitely.
If you and your listeners would like, I can kind of give you a little bit of background, just to let them know where I'm coming from and all of that.
That'd be great, brother. Go ahead.
All right. Well, pretty much 6 years ago. I'm doing my 6th anniversary special right now at Spreaker.com. Just type in the Unpleasant Blind Guy there and you'll find it. That's under SHR Media. I can also be heard on the Western Free Radio Network. About 6 years ago, I finally, after doing a lot of call-ins and stuff like that on various conservative talk shows and things, decided to go ahead and just do my own. And, it started out kind of wonky and everything, but as all of them do, if you guys talk to almost any one of these hosts, they'll all tell you they hate show one, and I'm no different. But I talk mainly about things like free speech. I'm a big free speech guy. I'm kind of I'm a conservative with
Of
a
course.
dash of libertarian in there. And I talk about the dangers of Islam, and I talk about the dangers of the progressive left because they're pretty much working hand in hand with Islam. And also, almost 6 years ago, I fell in with Jeff Mitchell, who's the host, and a group of good people over in the UK who run EDL Radio, the English Defense League radio show, which you can hear on blogtalkradio.com Thursdays and Sundays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Normally, just check blogtalkradio.com to find our show times.
Definitely.
And I did that because one of the things that's weird about me is that uh, early on I got interested in politics. I mean, early on, um, I was about 8 years. I can remember this, Kaiser. This was 1968, and I remember sitting there watching with my parents that disaster of a Democrat national convention in 1968, and
In
that kind of
Chicago, surprising.
yeah, exactly. But though that was a completely different Chicago. I mean, naturally they had all the baggage that they'd always had, but this was a Chicago for the younger listeners. This was Chicago that had a more conservative leadership, and Mayor Daley was having none of these anti-Vietnam War protesting hippies. So you had you had a pitched battle going on outside a national political convention. I mean, literally a pitched battle between the police and the
Right.
war protesters. And inside you had Daley's security forces, beating the crap out of people. One of my favorite, I gotta tell you, guys, one of my favorites is when Dan Rather, got knocked on his butt. I mean, it reached that far. Um, it was just a complete mess, and that got me even as an 8-year-old kid. That got me interested in government, and also, I began paying attention. The people who had the power to and who did sometimes more than they needed to beat my butt. Uh, they were the ultimate power in my life, and yet they would say things like, "Well, I have to do this," or "I have to go here and do that," and that was all because of this government thing.
Right.
All,
Right.
all that combined, and I started getting interested in the government and watching the news at the same time I was watching Batman. So,
Oh, so you haven't been a blind guy your whole life. That would be an interesting thing that the people might want to hear. I mean, I know I think I was in Afghanistan. I was 44 when
uh-huh.
when all of a sudden my arm wasn't long enough to
Hmm.
read, and I sounded like I was totally retarded. Oh, by the way, you can use whatever flavorful language you want to on my salty language on my
Okay,
program,
okay.
if you choose to. It's your business. Uh, but all of a sudden, I'm like, I can't read it, and I'd give it to my 2IC, and the guy would be like, "What do you mean you can't read?" I'm like, "I don't know." And my one bro, he's an awesome dude. He was like, "You need to get glasses as soon as we get to Dubai." And so at the end of contract, I went with Steve and saw an
Hmm.
ophthalmologist. Believe it or not, they have them in the Dubai airport.
Of course. Yeah. Well, now as far as that goes, yeah, I was born blind, and what people need to know is the level of vision that I've got, because the government defines legal blindness as 20 over 200, which means if you and I, that's with the best corrected eye. If you and I are standing and looking at a tree, I have to get 20 feet away from it to see it with the same detail that you can see it at 200. Or another example would be, yeah, I can tell you what a highway sign says when the car's going down the highway at 55 miles an hour by the time the sign gets to the hood of the car. Okay,
Wow.
so So it's a reduced degree of vision, but it's enough to where I have to use a white cane to get around, and use a lot of the alternative techniques of blindness. I have a lot of magnification and stuff going on with my computer and everything else, and I am a blind guy. I mean, I've been
Right.
I've gone through the mill. I've been refused jobs both in the politically correct way and in the not so politically correct way. I've been called a blind motherfucker and had somebody hit me in the face with their fist after they said it. So I know what hate crime's about. Nobody needs to tell me about that. There's been plenty of bigotry here and there. So yeah, that's where the blind thing is with me. But what I really wanted to do with my show,
Cool.
was send the message of conservatism, because I agree with Kenneth McClinton, who runs the Exceptional Conservative Network. He runs the Exceptional Conservative Network, and his message is the same as my message. He sees conservatism as the power of liberation for the people. In other words, when you can enrich yourself, then you can bless others with the money that you have. It's not just about taking money away and keeping it for yourself, and it's also about preserving the values that our nation represents: self-rule.
I agree. I agree
personally.
totally. I
Yeah.
agree totally, brother.
Yeah. So there's that. And those are the messages I put out because, even as a kid, I didn't like being told to shut up. And my God, by the time I got to vote for Ronald Reagan, my first vote for president, by the way, I was already more politically savvy, I'd say, than most of the adults around me. And, yet some of them still tried to tell me to shut up. But when you get your own show, as you well know, Kaiser, you can talk all you want. So I've been doing that the past 6 years. And, I was picked up thanks to Mary Brockman. You've seen her, I know, in some chat rooms.
Oh yeah.
Fans do a lot for us, and she hooked me up with Dan Butcher, who was running High Plains Pundit Radio at the time, and he brought me in, and then I was grandfathered in through that with SHR Media, and it's been a heck of a ride, man. There have been times when my shows hit number one, and I give all that to God. I give everything I do to God.
Of course.
Okay? Because what little talent I've got, He just directed me to do, and I've never been rich, never been born rich. I actually know what it's like to work for a living. I know what it's like to work in a factory doing sub-assembly, and know what it's like to work, construction jobs and things of that nature. And I think that's something that you really need, so that you can connect with the people. Because I've always been more comfortable at a cookout than I would ever be at I don't know, a fancy cotillion or state dinner. So
I agree totally, and I had to go. Unfortunately for me, I had to go to Marine dress blue balls and stuff like that. And, yeah, and the Army. I think one time we had a dress. Yeah, it was. It's like your dress blues. They call them the dress blues, but they're not. They look more like a cavalry uniform.
Right,
and
I've seen those.
Yeah, and I've had to go to walking out parties kind of things, and to me, that's all so pretentious. And I've always been grouted too, just like with you. My favorite job. I don't think I've ever said this on my podcast, but I stand by this to this day. The one that I loved, and if I could do it, I would own my own. It's not an affiliate where you buy
franchise,
a franchise of KFC, because from 14 to 17, I worked at KFC being a fry guy. And that was back in the 80s when Fly Guy was, a song. And that's how that happened, that we called ourselves Fry Guys. But the funniest part was I never was blessed enough to vote for Ronald Reagan, and I was a hardcore liberal, probably near communist. Well, I was a communist, and I'm just being honest. And by the time, I've never voted for a Democrat, but in my state, if I was going to vote for a Democrat, and he was not in my district, so I could never do it, it would have been a guy by the name. Oh, why am I mind dumping his name now? Jim. Trafficant. He's the only person I ever would have voted for that was a Democrat, and he was, a real Democrat. And but the Democrats we have now are not real. They're not Tip O'Neills that are smoking cigars with Ronald Reagan to discuss terms and to agree and find agreement. Just because you have an R behind your name, you're instantly a Nazi, which you and I have both been called forever and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But it's funny to me now, and the more interesting thing about this is that you are so grounded, and that's what I want people to see. And we need to hit on some news here in a minute, but I want to give you the good grace of telling everybody that you're so grounded in it that you will research the facts yourself. You'll give your best decision, and you're like me. If you're wrong, I lead with it. If I'm wrong, I'm going to say I'm wrong on something.
Oh, yeah. Get that out of the way right away.
Yeah, because it's true. You have to be. Anyway, so I've drone on long enough, but go on and fill people in on some things.
Well, I do want to talk about the research because, my God, I send out mailings when I do shows to other show hosts and people I know and whatever, but in a given show, I can have something like 10 different supporting documents because it's not easy. I mean, yeah, every host says this, but it is true. If you want to do a show and you want it to be worth a damn, you've got to have some kind of supporting evidence. You can't just get in front of a microphone and start popping off because people will smell that soon enough if you do that often enough. And, you also we have to be better than the fake stream media because
oh yeah, they can smell
even
a
if
lie,
they have information to the contrary or true information or something like that, they're going to go on their agendas, which we do too. But at least I like to back mine up with some substantive articles and things of that nature. So yeah, it's important that we do these things for our listeners, so that they're not wasting their time listening to us. Because even if we don't get paid for this, we're doing this. I'm doing this because I could never serve in the military. And I've got a family that was mostly Army and with a dash of Air Force, and cool. I never could serve. Yeah, but this is my way of service, and I'm just thankful to God that I got to this when I turned 53, and this year I'm just about 60. So I'm very thankful that I've been allowed to do this, and more thankful for hosts like you that'll have me on to yammer about it. So,
oh no, but I agree with you totally. The people out there can smell a lie like a fart in a car, and and that's the truth. And that's what I get. I get a no nonsense vibe from you, and I think the youth would really love it if they would just. There's a whole boomer meme, and I'm a Gen Xer with mad boomer skills, right?
Right.
And but I've raised my children, and my child, and also had mentees under me too, which is a very important thing. That's a continual thing. It's not like you had mentees under you, and you have to cut bait. Like I said in one of my last shows, I was like, everybody but one of my mentors I talked to, and that other one is because I honestly don't know if he's alive or dead. He went off on and I was wrong on, he went off in a different direction, and that's fine. I don't hate on him, but I also understand it. And but yeah, I mean, you're right on a lot. Let me shut my mouth.
Well, you have to take what you can get. I mean, I had, one of the, I had a terrible boss when I worked for a company in Dallas, but he did give me a couple of good tips, and one of them, of course, was managing expectations. And that's what you do when you have listeners to a show is you try and take them through the process from start to finish. And you notice that the fake stream media, what some people call, the legacy media, whatever you want to call it. I call it the fake stream media because it's just a stream of fakery.
I
Never
agree.
do that. They never do that. They just say, well, this happened, and well, okay, I'll give you an example. And he's not so much of the fake stream media, but he's gone weird over the past few years, and that's Glenn Beck talking about the Notre Dame fire.
Agree
And,
totally.
and he's on there today saying, "Well, we know with almost certainty that it was an accident." I mean, he is so quick to want to make this an accident. And he had the temerity to say on his program, he said, well, this is almost a blessing because if it had turned out to be Islamic extremism, that France would be on fire. And it's like, excuse me, Glenny, that's been happening for 10 years and it's gotten worse every year. I mean,
Exactly.
he did. Go ahead. No, I want to make this one point.
Okay.
He did have an expert on that said, yes, there had been about 30 or so church burnings, 20 or so church burnings in the past month in France. Now, he did do that, but he kept on saying two things. It's like, yes, this was an accident, even though everybody else is only speculating about it so far. He's saying that as if it were a fact. He's doing it, and he's saying, "Oh, it's such a blessing that it was only an accident." I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, like you were saying earlier, when you were saying that, yeah, everybody acts like it's a fact. Look, I have facts that I've been told by people over there,
Yeah.
and it could. Okay, when you use the term arson, instantly everybody wants to go goofy ballistics. It's not even been investigated yet, in all honesty.
Oh no.
But it is an arson because it was set. And it could have been accidentally set. You do have, just like homicide, you have an accidental homicide and a homicide with intent. You have to look at things correctly. It was an arson. It could have been some worker. Let's say he's taking out some big ancient bolt with a torch and he gets it too close to something and he sets, let's say, a curtain on fire. So it could have happened that way. So, but with the tensions going on, and this is what the media is also faulted on, the yellow vests were about immigration, and people are not seeing this.
Thank you for saying that. Go ahead, man.
They're not seeing this as... And it's coming up on Easter. And remember, the Cordoba Mosque was built because that was the furthest they got in Europa under not the Crusades, when they were coming in to spread the caliphate, the caliphate. Jesus, I'm trying to use like three separate terms, but it all means the same thing. But that was the furthest they got. And the symbolism was that was actually a church before it became a mosque. Right. And they wanted to build a mosque right down the road from Ground Zero in New York. Yeah. And that was a big deal. But see, people, because of, political correctness BS that we now live under, nobody wants to say the word, and I have brothers, and I mean this sincerely, who are Muslim, who I've worked with, and I trust with my ever-loving life. And I've had people die for me that were Muslim. And I'm being very frank and honest. But I also understand that, look, they say maybe 10% of Muslims are extremists, okay? Out of 1.5 billion, that's what? 1.5 million Muslims who are extremists.
Yeah.
And that's encroaching on military numbers now.
Oh, yeah.
And because of you have different things that a lot of people don't understand, but they're allowed to actually lie to you. And my dogs are about to bark, so I'll let you roll.
Well, no, I mean, what you're talking about is taqiyya, which is lying to progress Islam. And folks, you can visit thereligionofpeace.com. And it's a great resource. I love to hand that out as a resource because they have all sorts of subcategories, and that is one of them where they talk about the fact that yes, through the Quran and through other Islamic writings, Muslims are allowed to lie to people to advance the cause of Islam, and they do it all the time. And as far as this Notre Dame fire goes, you have to remember that Muslims love anniversaries. They love to talk about, or rather, they love to do things that mark certain anniversaries. And if this was set by a Muslim, if this was an arson case, and this arson was committed by a Muslim, it couldn't have been committed at a better time. When you look at as much news as a lot of the hosts of these shows do, you recognize that there is such a thing as coincidence, but there are times when coincidence gets stretched a bit too thin, especially when you understand that it is intertwined with Mohammedans and what they believe. Now, Kaiser, I'll give you and your listeners my view of Islam and Muslims as far as that goes, and it is that I hate the idea of the idea. Okay, now I'm doing it. Thanks. I hate the ideology of Islam. Okay. It is an ideology that is contrary to civilization itself. It is completely antithetical to anyone of other religions. It treats women like property. It encourages slavery. How to put this? It's one of the worst things around for gay people. It is a knuckle dragging ideology, and while other people might say, "Well, what about Christian ideology?" There have been reformations in the Christian church since Christianity's inception. Not so with Islam. Now there are various flavors of it,
right?
And there, for instance, in Alawite Islam, a Muslim can actually marry a Christian. So some of them are worse than others, but they're all based on the ideology of Islam, which I loathe.
Well,
as far as
go
ahead, man.
Just like you were about to say, or you did say earlier, and I'm gonna when you were talking about taqiyya, I used to say taqiyya will kill you, and it's the truth. But a lot of people don't understand it's a house of war, and the problem with the house of war that a lot of people who haven't lived in the Near East, and I actually function well with it within that cultural society, but I also don't push my ideology there. But you cannot separate, and this is the thing people don't understand in the West. They think it's just a religion like Christianity, and their societies are set up like Christian Western societies. They're not. Islam has the religion component, and this is by the Hadiths, the Surahs, and the Quran. Okay, and so they have the religion. they also have an ideology that flows into it, which is their judicial system.
Yes.
And you cannot separate that from the ideology and the politics and military component. And people don't realize you have the rule of abrogation also. So you may have the love and peace and happiness, and that was when he first came to Mecca. And then he got kicked out and put into Medina. And during Medina's time, he was plotting to come back to Mecca and conquer it. That's where you get the warfare portion, which abrogates all that peace and love. So the warfare goes over it. And then once he takes control, he puts his judicial edicts into it. And we're talking, when you say Mohammedan, you're using a classical term that's more correct than Islam. Because that's actually what we in the West used to refer to Islamic people, Muslims. We called them Mohammedans because they follow the Prophet Muhammad. And the Prophet Muhammad, you know, they have all kinds of things. He couldn't read, he couldn't write until he was given this thing to be able to write down his ideas, and created Arabic language and all this stuff. And a lot of that stuff's false. And
exactly.
And, you know, so anyways, go on, brother. I just wanted to fill people in on some of that.
No, it's good. Education is always good. So, you know, you're absolutely right about that. And when it comes to individual Muslims, I know what you mean when you say what you say. I mean, there are components of Muslims out there, and they're what I would call, and what others have called Minos. You know, they're Muslims in name only. That they might, they might go to the mosque on Friday. Yeah,
exactly.
But more or less they live like everybody else. You know, and they don't believe in all of this terrorism nonsense. They think it's terrible. They would just as soon live their lives and work and raise a family and just go on. But there comes a time, and you see this in every country where Mohammedans infiltrate and get to a certain population density, when the more violent sects of Islam, you know, the Sunnis or the Shiites, and you know, the Sunnis being the largest, will start to invade the community, and
the Wahhabists.
And the Wahhabists. Yes, you're correct there. Yes, they'll start to invade the community, and when it becomes time to start, going after the kafir, that's you and me, non-Muslims. They'll come around to these peaceful Muslims and say, hey, you going to come with us? And if they say, no, look, man, you guys are too extreme for me. Then they come around the next night, rape their wife and daughter, and beat up their son and them into the bargain, and they keep on doing it until they go, oh, I've seen the light, I'll come with you now. It in a way it isn't their fault, and in a way I feel sorry for them, because that's not the life they chose, but it's a life that's forced on them. I did a show. They're actually one of my previous shows. It's called 10%. I did it a couple of weeks ago, so you guys can look for that on Spreaker.com, where I get a little bit more into that, because I looked at the numbers, and the numbers will blow your mind. The numbers of Mohammedans that are willing to come out and protest something like the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, versus the ones who came out in protest of the shootings there in Paris, and the ones who come out and want to promote peace. The numbers are shocking. They really are. So that right there is where I'm at when it comes to Islam versus individual Muslims. I mean, I just cannot bring myself to trust a Muslim, because sooner or later, they're going to be given that choice. And who can blame someone for wanting to protect his family? I mean, in a way, I can't. It's almost, in this case, it's almost like blaming a dog for getting rabies. Okay, you still may have to put the dog down, but it's not really the dog's fault that, it got bit by a skunk or whatever and got rabies. All right.
Well, that comes down to the whole thing of this cultural relativism, where every culture's equal, even though they're not. I mean, nobody can say that an Islamic culture There's an old saying that I remember I've seen, but I remember where it was said. I'm not going to say the nation state just because I may go there to work or something. You never know.
Oh, yeah.
But in this nation state, and this is a Muslim talking, he said, you give a brick to people in the West and they will build a city. You give a city to a Muslim and they will build bricks. And he was being very honest with me because I've known this man forever. I mean, but he understands the bugaboo, and then those that criticize Islam, who are Muslim, instantly are apostates.
Oh, yes.
And it's no different with the fuckery afoot with Syria. Look, Assad, he's not the greatest guy. Neither was why am I mind dumping his name? Jesus, God, I can see his face.
Do you mean Sadat?
Saddam and Sadat. It's the same equal.
Okay.
And the same thing before the Arab Spring with, it starts with an M. Anyways, Mubarak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all this stuff, they may be dictators, but they moved towards the West. I mean, you had Time writing glowing articles about Assad and saying he was the best thing since sliced bread.
Right.
And the same thing they did with Gaddafi. And I'm not going to get into the 17 hours thing
Sure.
and all that, but what I will say is that good men lost their lives over Hillary Clinton's bumbles because they had something they wanted to push, which was the Levant. Nobody can doubt this. This is a fact. And since Maria Theresa, the Shuff House is a small house, but we have stood. And we will always stand. Of course, when I first came in, it was against communism.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't blur the line between communism and communism helping the PLO.
Oh, yeah.
They also helped the
That was
Irish
early
Republican Army, and politically they did. But they did not. Here's the rough bugaboo a lot of Americans have, and especially conservatives. That's why I can't even call myself a conservative anymore. I'm a Republican, because I believe in my republic. But they don't realize that at some point we were helping communists and buying their grain and all that stuff. That was real stuff. And also we were funding the IRA through the Kennedys and the Democrat Party. But Republicans were involved in it too. And there's been an incestuous, it's two heads of the snake feeding that same snake body. And that's why Trump, for all of his weaknesses, and we can joke around and go epic on that, but I really don't want to. But he has his weaknesses, but he gave a third option. Unlike Perot, Perot came up and he just didn't have the balls to finish. Where Trump's balls clank when he walks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Richard Marcinko wrote this about Bush the First, which might have been true when he was the head of the CIA, but this was definitely true of Trump. He does have balls of pure U-235. My feelings about Trump are, I think, executive orders are really nice. He's made some really nice executive orders. You can't complain about the economy at this stage, and all that's good stuff. But I'm not okay. I'm in the middle on Trump. I'm not I don't think he should shut up on Twitter. I don't think anybody should ever shut up anywhere. He's got his way of doing things. It appeals to people, and he's an American citizen. He ought to be able to speak when he wants to. So I'm not about. If I have any complaints about him at all, it's that he's had too many swamp rats in his administration that he's tried to listen to, and it's caused him to make some bad deals with Democrats. But Overall, he is a heck of a lot better choice than Hillary Clinton would have been. And yeah, I think you're right. I think the Republican establishment doesn't like him. That's why the
They didn't.
Republican congressman didn't work with him.
They didn't like Reagan either.
Oh no, no,
The
no!
weird
They despised him.
the weird thing is they forced him to take George Herbert Walker Bush,
Right.
and just to even kill for the quote unquote business Republicans, just like the business Democrats can't stand. Honestly, I like all these communists coming in to the Democrat Party to out them, and you see Pelosi distancing herself from them.
Oh
But
yeah.
but I really don't care about that. It's one of those things where it's just like, you're eating the ass that you put before you, and remember, what's the old adage of eating pussy one slip of the tongue and you're in deep shit.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I look at Omar and AOC and people like that, and I'm actually, while they disgust me, I'm actually grateful for them because they're the best commercial that you could possibly have for returning control of Congress to the Republicans.
They're telling the truth.
Oh yeah, they are. They're just like, again. They're just like Muslims. This is why, or Mohammedans, I should say that. This is why Democrats get along so well with Mohammedans, because they're, in a lot of ways, they're exactly the same, and they'll tell you the truth. Jan Rennie works with us on EDL Radio. She's isn't a host. Jeff Mitchell is the host. Excuse me, but she brings us a lot of great news stories, and people, where she gets them. She gets them from translated Arabic newspapers. Because they just tell you the truth about what their main goals and priorities are. Okay, they don't sugarcoat it or anything like that. Mostly, I think, because they don't think that any of us will read them. But there are English translations of them, and that's where you get them. Yeah, you're right, Kaiser. They are telling the truth about what they really are and what they really want to do.
That's why last election cycle, I thought the best election, honestly, was not Hillary and Trump.
Uh-huh.
It would have been an honest conversation between a guy who honeymooned in communist Russia. Nobody can doubt this. It's fact.
Yeah.
And that was Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump. That would have been the best election cycle. That would have given us the best temperature of where America truly is at. And I do believe with the AOCs, with the Ilhan Omars, the other bitch from, I can't think of her name. That's the reason why I call her a bitch, so people know she's the female from Michigan.
Right. I know who you mean, but I
can't think of her name.
Well.
Yeah, because she's so she's so unentertaining that I don't even want to give her name out. But, right. Ilhan Omar is saying all this white supremacist hate. Well, you know what, man? When every Trump is I told people this, and I still tell them this. I said, the way to defang the left, and I'm being very frank and honest, is super simple. They call you a Nazi, say, don't shrink from it. Oh, I'm not a Nazi. I'm not. No, say I'm an ardent Nazi. They call you a fascist. Oh no, I'm not a No, I'm an ardent fascist. You've known me for how long? This happened in my personal life. A guy who I like and trust, and he's a friend of mine. And after the election, he was like, I don't like fascists. I said, well, I'm a fascist, man. I said, but we talk about bicycles. We talk about this, that, and the other. And I said, we can still have conversations. And I said, am I threatening your life? Is my wife threatening? Is my son? No. Okay, so why are we having this issue? And then all of a sudden, later on, my uncle dies and things happen. That's just life. And the interesting part was he was like, I didn't know that was and my uncle was a fucking hard leftist. and he was a union guy through GM. I was a union guy going through college. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a union iron worker. I just never bought into the bullshit. They used to always give me shit. How can a Republican ever be in a part of a union? Because the union fights for the rights of people. But the union, that was back in the day when I applied to be a union iron worker, one of the questions was, are you a member of the Communist Party or do you have communist leanings?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
I can remember that. Yeah.
And they do not have that now, brother.
Oh, well, that used to be one of the very first tenets of the AFL and CIO when they merged. All right, because they used to be different unions, but when they merged, that was in one of their very first statements was that they were definitely anti-communist. And back in those days, if you even alluded to the fact that a union guy might be a communist, you'd better get ready for a punch in the nose because that's what you would get. But the thing about these people though is that they're out there telling the truth, and I will tell you something here on your podcast that I talked about a bit with Ken McClinton before this last election, and it's a little prediction I'm going to make. I thought this was going to happen in November. It did not. Okay. And I have to preface this with saying that I am very much against using violence of any sort against the opposition. That makes us like them. I have no problem with defending ourselves. If we're attacked, that's fine, and we should be prepared for that. Okay, but using violence against the opposition is just not only a no-brainer, it's a no-winner. It's not
ignorant.
Anything you want to do.
It's ignorant.
It's ignorant, and yes, in the cases of things like that a-hole who shot up that mosque in New Zealand, it's demonic, in my opinion. Okay, so that
he was a straight up cunt. We can both agree on that.
He was absolutely. Now, I had to preface this with that though, because again, once you've been doing this stuff for 50 years, you begin to develop a spider sense when it comes to this. The establishment Democrats, as you call them, the business Democrats, really would just as soon what do they call themselves? The Justice Democrats, which that's what this little segment of people call themselves. The Omars and the AOCs and people like that go away.
The SJWs, the Social Justice Warriors. Yeah,
right,
I know them very well.
They would just assume that they go away, but they also believe in what Rahm Emanuel does, which is you never let a good crisis go to waste, and they never let a good operative go to waste. I believe that before the next election, remember last election we had the fake bomb attacks. They weren't even real bombs. They were just models of bombs. They didn't even have working timers on them or actual explosives.
Energetic material. I was an EOD tech, a 55 Delta in the Army. So I looked at them and I knew they were bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well have just stamped Ravel on the side of them, right? But that's what happened last election. What I told Ken in November. Before this happened was I think that they're going to try and create a situation where one of their own is attacked, possibly killed. And I think that your number one and number two targets now, excuse me, and actually I can think of three right off the top of my head, are AOC. That would be target number one because they can stand to lose her the most and gain from her death the most. Then
the
Omar.
Dems will do this. Yes, they will.
The Dems, yes, the Dems will do this. I want to emphasize that this will be the left that does this. Then Omar, they would benefit greatly from her demise if they could try and pin it on the right. Again, it would be the left doing this, and then Pete Buttigieg, or Mayor Pete, whatever he wants to call himself. That would be
Bathhouse Buttigieg.
There you are.
I know you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. He's fabulous, but I could see.
I heard that he likes to do a lot of bukkake.
Well, The thing is, though, I think this is a serious possibility because they're running out. They have to go to the spectaculars now because they have no arguments on economics. Their their socialist regimes around the world are collapsing. They have no argument when it comes to economics. They have no argument when it comes to social engineering. Look at any city that's run by Democrats; it's a crap hole. So that they have no argument when it comes to foreign policy because under Obama we were a joke.
You wanna hear
With Trump, we're respected. Go ahead.
you wanna hear an open secret that everybody on my page knows?
Uh,
When I was with CBP working for Immigration and Customs,
right.
I worked in the city of Detroit. I know what an American failed city looks like.
Oh yeah.
I live in Ohio, very close to Columbus. I grew up in Columbus actually and went to school there. I dated a black girl my entire time in the city of Columbus. Loved her to death, and I have no shame about my past. I married my beautiful wife. She happens to be white, and she is the best fit. It doesn't change my fond memories and love for the other person. But the interesting thing is, in the 80s, we had this shit solved.
Yeah.
And it took, and I'm going to use a word that you may find off putting, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't call the O man anything but O nigger because he did exactly what his communist parents, both of them, his porno mother, and his real father was Frank Marshall Davis. It was not Obama. And his mentor, read his book. People don't want to listen and read his book. He used to publish a book. Glenn Beck actually understood this stuff, and he just said he's a communist. I remember the first episode. I was a member of that, the Blaze. Right. And
sure.
That's why the Blaze, that's why all CRTV, all that's going to flounder. They got rid of Gavin McInnes.
Oh, yeah, great guy.
Great guy. And he's being sued. But saying these bad words, does that mean, look, those words actually mean something. If you say something to somebody, you're actually calling them out. It doesn't mean I wish harm. I just know who he is. It'd be like I'm half Dago and half Boxhead, German and Italian.
Yeah.
I accept that. And they're in comedy. They used to be able to say that. I mean,
oh yeah,
my favorite comedians to this day are still saying it. Nick DiPaolo, you're having Owen Benjamin, you're having many people still continue on with normal comedy, but you can't say those words, man. Can't.
No. I know you can't. Now, the only reason I don't use the word nigger is because I developed this 40 years ago, so this ought to tell you. I mean, I grew up in Texas with black people and Mexicans around all the time. I think it refers to a thing, not a person. I recognize it for the.
It is a thing. It's a cell on a ship. If you look it up, it's a cell on a ship.
Yeah.
And it's used during storms, and it is a thing. It's not a person, and it's anyways.
But that's just my choice. I mean, I take your point. I take your point. I mean, I call him Blobama because he just blew. I mean, he was a horrible president. It was very funny.
I thought you were meaning Bathhouse Berry time.
No. My stepson, or a guy who would have been my stepson if I had made the mistake of marrying his mother. Well, thank you, Jesus, that I didn't. Lived with me for a while, and this was during the 2008 election, and he asked me. He said, you're not going to vote for Obama. Why are you watching his speeches?" And I said, "Because I want to give him every chance I possibly can. I want to see if there's any reason that I could possibly want to vote for this guy."
And read his books.
Yep. And I could not find one. I voted for the other guy. I voted for Romney based on policy. All right, not and that's the way I look at the presidency. I look at the presidency based on policy, and that is why I am not a never Trumper. Even though I did well. I supported a few others before Trump got nominated. But that was just I was a Bobby Jindal guy at first, partly because I think he knows about Islam and the dangers that it faces, or that it poses rather. And then I was a Ted Cruz guy again because of policy. I mean, you can't go wrong with a guy who argued 9 cases successfully before the Supreme Court. Um, but when Trump got nominated, I said, okay, fine. I mean, he beats the alternative. But I try and maintain a level head about him. I'm not one of these people that thinks he can do no wrong. I think the only one that I have full faith and trust in is Jesus Christ, not any
Exactly.
politician. And so once in a while, yeah, when I think Trump, strays from the conservative reservation, so to speak, I give him a little bit of static on it. But um, for the most part, I support him. I mean, I've got one story here, and this one, well, okay, one of the things he's doing right now, he's passing around, or apparently, according to this story, he's gone after Ilham Omar with this 9/11 montage video thing, and that's a good thing. I'm for that, but I want him to be careful about that, because it's really easy to do what the lefties call jumping the shark on it. Protesting about it too much. She's her own worst enemy when it comes to this stuff. All she has to do is open up her noise hole, and she does herself a lot of damage among people. I mean, you saw this, Kaiser, yourself. The people of New York were not pleased when she came out at that CARE meeting and said, "Oh well, some people did some things." So I'm for President Trump
Right.
doing that, but again, he should be careful, because she is going to be her own worst enemy when it comes to this. There's that one, and then there's one other, which now this one is a little bit more in my bailiwick, but there are a lot of disabled folks out there. They have real disabilities. They have missing limbs, or they're in wheelchairs, or they're blind guys like me, or whatever. Okay, and we know that there are a lot of fakers out there, especially during the Obama administration. This is something else that happened. The number of people who were diagnosed as quote unquote disabled really aren't. I mean, not being able to comfortably urinate in public is not something that I consider to be a disability. It's a damnable inconvenience, but it's not quite a disability in my opinion. Now,
Well, I love that you brought that up, because
go ahead.
everybody has been alongside. Look, taking my son to a scout meeting one time.
Yeah.
It was a long time. We were caught in traffic. This is going down to Cincinnati. I'll never forget the embarrassment, the shame I had. But I came to an area that was wooded, pulled the car over, ran, thought I was going to crap my pants. Luckily, I always carry these little MRE.
There you go.
I collected them my entire time in the military.
Nice.
Toilet papers, and ran into a wood line, went far enough back, nobody could see. And if you have to urinate, you can. A buddy of mine once told me this, and I'll share it with you, and you'll see what I mean. You know what the great thing about living in the country is? You can piss anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And you know what
Yeah.
the best thing about night is?
Can't see it.
It's like country. You can piss anywhere.
Just about, yeah.
It's not like nobody wants to display their penis, and a woman doesn't want to. And of course, if my wife had an emergency like that, you cover it. Things
Oh yeah.
happen. You bury it. You do it properly. But the whole thing is, man, we've just lost ourselves. I think we've. And here's a question I have for you. After I say this, I'll say the question. We've lost our ancient thoughts. There's a difference between me waving my penis around, walking down the street peeing, and a difference between me turning towards a building or a sign or something and urinating, hoping nobody sees me, because you'd be petrified. And yet, it's all still classed the same. This is where the laws have had problems. But you brought up Christianity, and I am a Christ, in modern parlance, a Christ cuck. I
Right.
believe in God. I believe in Christ. But I also am a pagan in one way because I was always raised to honor my ancestors. And I think we all are, and that's something we actually have missed. They are trying to make honoring your ancestors be a bad thing. And I've had a few gentlemen on my podcast that actually understand it. I would love to actually have you on with one of them, or I'll even give you the ability to reach out to him. But it's Robert Weisthor, and you can look him up. A lot of people call him this, that, and the other because he is truly a truth seeker, but he's probably one of the most intelligent men, and you are also.
I
Besides,
I got you well fooled.
well, that's a good thing. But besides Colonel X, who was one of my mentors in the Marine Corps, all three of you guys, man, if I had the ability to link all three of you guys up and just moderate and sit down and just let you guys talk for 4 or 5 hours when my live stream gets put back by YouTube. And by the way, I have no strikes, so I have no idea why they do not allow me to live stream. Yeah.
Well, heck with it, man. Do a live show sometime. I'm going to send you this over Skype here real quick. I know that might make a noise on your end, but I'm going to do this. All right. So there you are. That's the story that I'm gonna. But before I do something that I have to do, I got to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to be honest about it. Before I do what I got to do, I'll say this. You were talking about ancestor worship. I mean, the 10 Commandments say, honor thy father and thy mother. Now, if that isn't respecting, your ancestors, I think some people take those that commandment wrongly,
Right.
and put too little emphasis on it. I think you can put whatever emphasis on it you want, more or less, as long as you recognize that there's only one God. So that's my take on it. And I'm only going to take, just a few minutes.
I agree.
I got to run and do a Pelosi. Okay.
I got it.
Right
I got
back.
it. Go do a Pelosi. See, folks, this is the way, and why I'm glad that I have this is because you guys get to meet these awesome dudes that I just find. You meet a lot of my brothers, and it's about the conversation. The conversation is what we need to have now. We need to stop the backbiting, butt fucking each other, and throwing each other down the aisle. When he comes back, I'll ask this question, and I'm saying it open mic, so hopefully you can hear it. I'm going to ask a question. During his era and my era, and everybody else, notice I always ask the same question. I never heard anybody say, don't talk to him. He's a Republican. Don't talk to him. He's a Democrat. Never heard that shit before. Never heard it, because that's not America. You didn't ask people who they voted for. Guess what I still don't do? And guess what? If somebody did tell me, I wouldn't give a fuck. It's just like that guy. Oh, well, you voted for Trump? He asked me. I'm not going to hide it. Oh, well, you're a fascist. No, I am a fascist. Okay, fine. Now we're going to have a conversation. And religion, you know what? Our family is always held because of our line. The line marches on. We've always held sacred our ancestors. We have our place where they're buried. And we always show reverence. And I think most Americans do this. And he's exactly right. I didn't know his religious beliefs, or if, honestly, um, he might take offense about. I don't think it contradicts. I honestly don't.
Nancy has left the building. I'm back.
Awesome. So I was feeling dead air, but I was also saying that I would ask you, honestly, and I've asked this from everybody, and you can listen back to the program. You'll find out you answered the one question that I wanted answered, and I talked about that, about
Cool.
ancestors
Yeah.
and respect for our dead, and
Oh, yes.
talked about the line marches on, because DNA wise, every time you or I have made a child, those children are a part of us and they will continue to carry the line. That's something that everybody wants to make it, oh, it's so beautiful, women mostly, but it's a process. It's what we're supposed to do. They have the factory, we deliver the product to make sure they can make another one or two or
Right.
three. Um, but that's tangential. We've already talked about that. The line marches on. That's a correct, and maybe I'll make that the title of this program, actually. But the more important issue that I wanted to ask you, oh my God, I just dropped it because I was talking to you about, oh, my land. It was, oh, I wish this was live stream because somebody would be like, it's this. Dude, I hate getting old.
Oh, I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah. Well, we can get onto something else while you're thinking of that.
Sure.
And that's the story that I just threw you. We're talking about disabilities, and you know the thing that one of the things that bugs me as a disabled person, as a blind guy, is the people, like I said, who fake disabilities. We saw a lot of that during the Obama administration, as I said. And now the Trump administration is trying to find ways to root those fakers out. And I approve of that because there are people who are on disability now that frankly don't need to be, and that needs to be handled and that needs to be dealt with. But there's been an idea floated that I frankly, I think I really hate. This comes out of, by the way, this comes out of Forbes. Okay. And this was shared by, a fellow blind guy. And the headline on it is how a Trump proposal, that's only proposal, could reduce, quote, happy, end quote, disabled people. And what it's talking about here, the quote unquote happy disabled people, are people who really aren't disabled, but they've got these things like reduced ability to urinate in public and stuff like that, and things of that nature. The way they want to try and do that, though, is where I have the problem. They want to monitor social media, and and that is they want to monitor people's social media. One assumes they want to monitor people's social media who get disability, and the only problem I have a couple of problems there. The first problem, of course, is the obvious Fourth Amendment issues and other issues like that. Another problem is that, say, somebody like me that has some vision might post a picture, and then suddenly I get a letter saying that I have to go down and prove that I'm blind, and go to an eye doctor's office and get a certification and things like that, which does happen once in a while anyway. Wasting money for the state, by the way. I am not going to ever see again unless they develop a bionic eye. That ain't happening. In fact, I have glaucoma, which means eventually what vision I have will be gone. And it brought up another thing that I thought of. They would be using social media for this. We're talking about Facebook, Twitter, and things of that nature. And if this goes through, which I hope it doesn't, that will prove even more that these are government-backed public utilities, and therefore subject to the First Amendment. and I think someone could successfully sue them for breaches of the First Amendment, which they do this to us all the time. They breach our First Amendment rights all the time. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of those. The left will say outrageous things and nothing happens to them. Same with Mohammedans. But if one of us steps out of line at all, we'll get banned and things of that nature. In fact, my brother.
I'm experiencing it. I mean, I
Oh,
can't.
of course you are.
I can't live stream, and yet I got no strikes. I mean, YouTube.
Exactly. Yeah.
This will go up to BitChute too. The problem with BitChute is, I uploaded my YouTube from yesterday with my brother Baz,
Right.
and it's hilarious to me. I uploaded the same video at the same time to BitChute. DLive is saying, well, this, that, and the other, but it's all cryptocurrency, which I do not trust.
Nor I. Yeah.
Yes. You know why I'm talking about it? Because I know it's been infiltrated. But the interesting thing that nobody's looking at is, in all honesty, man, we're bringing the... Oh, I know what the question was. Damn it. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. In your lifetime, did you ever, or did your family ever say, that's a Democrat, that's a Republican, don't talk to him? I never heard that in my life. And the first time was during the Trump election that me and my wife were like happy, and there were several people in the coffee shop, bike shop, whatever it was. And the guy says, oh, I don't like fascists. And I said, dude, we've been friends for years. And we talk about bikes. And I said, I'm talking bicycles, not my Harley and my flipping garage.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And he's like, yeah. And the light went on, and he was the same dude that was surprised that that guy who died was my uncle. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, so it's just bizarro world, man. And I honestly would love to hear you expound if you ever heard, because you're slightly older than I am. You're a hell fellow well met, and I'm very happy to introduce you to my audience because, guys, this guy gives it to you unfiltered. Yeah, I may not want to use certain words, and maybe I shouldn't use those either in the context, but in the context that I used it, it wasn't abusive. It wasn't saying anything other than, one person, he exhibited all the attributes of a cell that has a name, and it's used for storms, and other than storms, it's a useless cell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as the language goes, I try not to go to the the cuss words and things like it, because I know me. If I begin to use things like that, I'll keep on using them, and eventually I'll use one where I don't need to use it. It'll be at an inappropriate time, and I'll just bust out with it because I know me. I'll train myself into the habit, and it won't come out and be a good time. Now, so it's really in self-defense that I do it, and also because on Spreaker, if I just get on Spreaker and say fuck fuckity fuck, I have to put in there explicit language. All right. But I get a few more listeners if I don't do that. So again, it's out of self-defense. It's not because I clutch the pearls every time someone uses a curse word. In fact, that's when you listen to the English Defense League radio show. We do get into some rather salty language on there as well, because the working class people in the UK are real people, and they talk real language. So they don't hold back, and that's why they're some awesome people. But Kaiser, you asked about relationships and family and things like that, and I have not seen this country more divided than I did. Getting into the 2016 election, and I do blame the left for that because they were the ones really that started it. As you pointed out earlier, in the 1980s, especially getting towards the end of the 1980s, the middle and end of the 1980s, I won't say that we had the racism problem solved in this country because we'll never have it solved. There'll always be some race bigots around. But we were getting pretty close to having it resolved. Okay, people were coming pretty close to the point where they said, "Okay, look, that we have some differences between us, but we can get together and be together and enjoy each other, and yeah, even love each other." And that's the great thing. And then along, of course, came the left, and Obama just made everything even worse. And the divisions just got deeper and deeper and deeper until you reached the 2016 election. And at that point, candidate Trump came out with his straight talk about everything, and the left lost their minds. And that is where we wound up with families more divided, honestly, in 2016 than they had been since the Vietnam War. Because I'm a Cold War baby. I was born in 1959. Okay, I'm not a boomer, but I'm a Cold War baby. So what that means, I have one foot in where you're at with Gen X, and another foot in where the boomers are. And yeah, during the Vietnam War, you had some very tense moments. People who were for fighting communism wherever it was, and people who did not see this foreign war as our business and wanted us to be out. And tensions were very high on both sides. And yeah, you had holiday gatherings and things like that where fights broke out and stuff like that, just like in 2016, 2017. It was pretty much the same thing. So we've gone almost full circle with our divisions just on different subjects here in 50 years. Yeah.
And it's
a terrible thing.
It's always been provoked by the communist, and that is something I talk, and Beck used to talk about it. He shut that shit down.
No,
but he used to talk all the time, and honestly, it's because everybody who came over from the Frankfurt School that went to Columbia, they happened to be Jewish, and nobody wants to talk about the JQ, and I'm not going to talk about it now. That's not what this. It's not a religionist kind of thing. I'm trying not to be, although it sounds like we've done this today. But it is a communist thing, but even the term racist and racism, that started with communists who happened to be Jewish in Russia during the White and the Red War, where the communists were taking over from the Tsar. And any propaganda that that's just racist. And it's like, now, honestly, that term is bullshit. And I don't even believe in racism anymore because it's just a way to shut down a conversation. Same thing with fascist, Nazi, all that shit.
Exactly.
And the left, who propped up with, anti-racist action, all this shit back in the day, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s,
sure,
90s. They've actually, I think the SJWs, the Social Justice Warriors, they've LARPed so hard and yelled so loud that everybody's a Nazi that, honestly, that terminology becomes useless.
It is. It is useless, and in a way, it's dangerous. I'll fight real racism wherever I see it, and that's why I say there are still real race bigots out there, and they're mostly on the left. Something that I told you when we spoke earlier was that if this is a good way for people to recognize this stuff. You'll see someone who knows all the current politically correct terms. They won't say things like race bigot and stuff like that. They'll have the latest and greatest from academia on how people are thisist and thatist and thisophobes and thatophobes, and it's for this reason and that reason. And they jump up and down and yell and pee their pants and because they don't have a problem with peeing in public, and all these kinds of things. I guarantee you look behind that mask and you'll find someone that might as well be wearing a bed sheet and a hood. Okay, they are some of the worst racists. This is called redirection, guys. Is what this is called. You yell loudly about the other guy doing something while you're doing it yourself. That's to take attention away from what you're doing, or in this case, what they're doing. Anti-Semitism comes into this as well. You won't find a more anti-Semitic group of people than people on the left. Almost everyone I know that's on the right, Kaiser, is in support of Israel and has no problem with Jewish people at all. Okay, but when you begin to look at the left and don't listen to what they say, but watch what they do, which is the most important thing, you begin to see that they are as anti-Semitic as it gets. I did guys, if you want to hear about that, I did a show, I think it was in February, called Don't Be. So go back and look for that at Spreaker.com if you'd like a little bit of that. But that's kind of my feelings on in that area.
Well, my thought happens to be a little, I will call a Jewish person out. And, of course, I'd be called anti-Semitic. But then I would be called that if I was calling out a Muslim.
Oh,
because they're both Semitics. And it's just a bullshit term, just like racism. It means nothing. And, honestly, here's the thing they don't realize. The left does not realize that by calling everybody something, that means nobody's anything. And
that's right.
I'm not a big pusher of Democrats are the real racist. There's racism, and trust me, we all have bias. I'll never forget that. I'll give you an example from my personal experience. We had a awesome, and later on he actually was a sergeant major of mine in the military. One of my actual mentors before I went in the military. He was a Navy guy before he went into the National Guard. That's where I met him after I left, okay? And in school we called him Count Blackula, okay? And that was even my black girlfriend. It was a joke, okay? And he knew this. Nobody talked shit about this. And the funny part is Reginald Wagstaff, that's his name. I don't know if he's still alive or not. If he is, I wish him well. He's a great man. He knew all about this. He even knew me and her were, dating and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And the funniest part to me was it meant nothing to anybody. And so he said something one day. I remember being a dumbass kid. What was I? Maybe 14. Yeah, I was 14 in this class, and I'm like, I don't have no prejudice. He goes, okay, hold on, shut up. Do you like Grey Poupon or Stadium Mustard? I said, I'll mix.
Brilliant.
I'll mix the two. But I'd prefer Stadium Mustard on my hot dog because I was a baseball player, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, you're prejudiced. He goes, everybody's prejudiced against something. He said, so you made an idiotic... But see, they were teaching us... I was 14 in high school. They were teaching us fucking critical thought.
Prejudice was back in those days, and back when I went to high school. I graduated in 1978. It was a buzzword. In other words, if you were prejudiced, that meant that you didn't like black folks. But what he was talking about, yes, it's beautiful, man. That's why I laughed and said brilliant, because he was teaching you critical thinking. We have our preferences, and and you can't get away from that. But the difference between someone who is a flat out race bigot and someone who is not is recognizing that we have the differences and being willing to look behind those at the person and deciding whether or not you want to be associated with, hang out with, fall in love with, date, or possibly marry that person. It has to do with how hard you're willing to work to get to know that other person, despite any prejudices that you may have. It's going beyond, and it does take a little bit of work, and who knows, man, maybe that is why you see, at least to my mind. Now, you seem to disagree with this, but that's okay. At least to my mind, you seem to see more race bigotry on the left because people who are dragged into the ideology of the left, if they have any problems, I'm talking about rank and file, not the rulers, not the leaders. I'm talking about rank and file. People who are dragged into that ideology, if they have any real problem, it's that they are a little bit mentally lazy in that they don't research this enough. So that's where I'm at there.
I would agree with you somewhat, but what I would say is, look, we got rid of basically putting people in areas, right?
Right.
We got rid of putting people in different schools, right? And now you have colleges, the places where you're supposed to be taught critical thinking, not high school like you and I both got it. They're saying, well, we have to have no whites allowed day. We have to have no males allowed day. We have to separate everybody. This is the intelligentsia of America at this point, and the West, which is absolutely a suicidal recipe. And I guess that's my point, is that they're like, they're talking about segregated housing again. And you have people that have written, if you don't listen to Tim Pool, please do. He's a liberal that has a mind. And I always push different things. I tell everybody, you have to look to the extreme left. And that means all the way to Antifa. You have to look all the way, Unicorn Riot, whatever. You have to look all the way to TRS, the rightstuff.biz. You have to look to all these, and honestly, on TRS.biz, I think that's not as right wing. It's comedy for the most part, and they're good people in some ways that they talk about things, but they've been forced into that paradigm of this false left-right paradigm. Look,
Right.
it's not left-right. It's a circular thing. What happened with Hitler? Do I disagree with the amount of people killed that they say Hitler killed? Maybe, maybe not. That's a discussion for another time, and I'd love to have it with you, brother. On the left, nobody can doubt they killed hundreds of millions from the Chinese to the
God.
Russians. And that dwarfs what Hitler did. Yeah, Hitler bad, communist good.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a false left paradigm. It is a circular. It's put your arms out, put them over your head, touch your fingers, and guess what? It all ends with massive killings. I've actually been to mass graves in Iraq. And these people that they throw numbers. There's a guy by the name of David Cole. He's a Jewish guy. He's on my page. You can look him up. He did videos, wrote books, and guess what? He's an anti-Semite. How can a Jewish man that did honest research be an anti-Semite? I don't get that. And they did that with Avi, whatever his name was. about Muslims with that Jim Jeffries guy.
You mean Avi Yemeni? Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
talk a bit about that if you'd like. Sure.
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine. I mean, we're hitting that point where we're going to have a long download process. I honestly, folks, this is why I brought this gentleman on. Everybody didn't like when I brought on. I did bring him on because I met him in real life, and I brought him on back in the day. That was Adam Kokesh, and everybody was throwing out this, that, and the other comments. You don't need to do that, man. People, I bring people on that I think you can learn from, and you don't have to agree. And guess what? We can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Would you
Sure.
agree
Yeah.
with that?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I had we had a very nice little debate at the height of the 2016 primaries because Jeff Mitchell, who hosts CDL Radio, was a big Trump fan, and I was, at that point, Bobby Jindal had dropped out, so I was for Ted Cruz, and we had a debate about it, and yeah, we parted friends, and we've been friends ever since, and that's part of the reason why the format of my show is going to change a bit. We're going to do a bit more of a UK slash USA type show. We'll have stories from both countries, and it's all because, in a way, we're fighting the same foes on both sides of the pond. Yeah, we had the disagreement, we still do, but we're still friends. We're still brothers in arms, so to speak. Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
That's absolutely awesome. So go on and
okay. Well,
do your riff about what you were going to say earlier before I hijacked it, and I hope you remember.
No, I got it, man. Yeah, this has to do with a fellow named Avi Yemeni, and if you want to find out who he is, go to tr.news. This is a new news organization that's been put together by Tommy Robinson, who is who has turned journalist. He was at one time he still is, in my opinion, a civil rights pioneer. He founded the English Defense League, which, if you want to find out what that is, go to www.englishdefenseleague.org.uk and read their mission statement. It's an organization that is prepared to fight the excesses of Islam. No, not to go after individual Muslims or anything like that, but to get the truth out there about Islam. And Tommy Robinson is a man who has, for his beliefs, been imprisoned. He's been put in situations where he was almost beaten to death, and he's still facing prison time. This is a man who has gone through a lot to get the truth out there. And he set up a news organization called tr.news, and it's definitely worth a perusal, guys, because you'll see him do things like bust the crap out of Panorama, which is the UK's equivalent of 60 Minutes, and things of that nature. Really great stuff. Now, Avi Yemeni, he is an ally of Mr. Robinson's. He comes from Australia. He's he's a Jewish guy from Australia, and he, like Tommy Robinson, believes in telling the truth about Islam, and also in busting fake news. Now he did an interview with Jim Jeffries from the Comedy Central.
Oh my God! I can't believe you just said he was a Jew. Oh my God, that's so horrible. No, look. My opinion is Israel has a right to exist. Jewish people have a right to live, as any race does. They just, it's just silliness. It's so flippin' silly that, hey, guess what? You're a racist, so am I, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's put it this way. He went to the opening rally for the Panodrama documentary, which was in the UK, right right at the BBC's main headquarters in the UK. And as he was walking towards the stage and everything, the counter protesters there, well, the protesters there, the Muslims, Antifa, people like that, were hurling all sorts of vile names at him and calling him racist and bigot and all this stuff. And he's going through there wearing his yarmulke. Okay, so they obviously knew he was Jewish. At any rate, Avi is, he's a Jewish guy from Australia. Now, he had done this interview with Jim Jeffries from the Comedy Channel. I forget which show Jeffries hosts right now on the Comedy Channel because I don't watch it because it's all left-wing drivel at this point, except for the cartoons. I will watch Futurama, but, that's just me. At any rate, Avi did this interview with Jim Jeffries in Australia. And it was going okay and all that, blah, blah, blah. The guy was going to try and do a hit piece on him because he's associated with Tommy Robinson, who has been pretty much banned from almost everywhere on the internet. And Jeffries was going to try and make Avi out to be, a right-wing thisist and thatist and thisophobe and thatophobe and all that stuff. It was for a hit piece, and Avi knew it. So he turned his phone on and secretly recorded Jim Jeffries saying a lot of rather offensive things. And you can find that on tr.news, by the way, if you go there and look for it. So.
Well, I don't think he secretly recorded it. He laid 3 separate phones down, if I remember right. I watched the video.
Did you? Okay.
And
okay.
yeah, and
you know what it's about.
And I'll tell you, Tommy Robertson secretly recorded it, but with the Jim Jeffries interview, there was no secrecy. He's like, I'm just putting this phone over here. We're gonna, and Jim Jeffries is just a moron because he's like, I'll draw Muhammad, and then you can see, and they did the same shit to Alex Jones, bro.
Yeah.
It's a narrative they want to push. And it really breaks my heart because the media did this to themselves completely.
Oh, of course.
When you have that little poof, and I can't remember what channel he's on, and I don't even remember his name now, the little fat, ball-headed prick, who always like, oh, well, we don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I understand, what's her name? The Dyke, but both of them, and that's a fucked up part too. Is all of us know homosexual people. None of us give a fuck about them. But once you make that shit public, where you're like trying to social signal, that's the problem right now. I think.
Oh yeah,
is social signaling. I got to be more superior than you because I'm gonna say, I stand with Israel. I do this. I do that. No, I can disagree with everybody. But as soon as I disagree with Israel, if I disagree with the U.S., I'm anti-Israel, anti-U.S. I'm anti whatever it is, black. I'm anti Hispanic. I don't know. I'm just. I guess I'm anti everything. And so that I guess I'm okay with that because I'm okay with being anti. And I think we're allowed to do that in the United States of America.
Oh, man. Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No. We'll get back to Avi Yemeni, but I gotta say, one of my favorite movies, I think every American should watch, is Falling Down. Because at one point in that movie, the main guy in the movie looks at another guy and says, we're Americans. I'm allowed to disagree. And you are. I don't think. This is the reason that these things happen. When you talk about these things, you're being called anti this and anti that, is because it's whatever your enemies can use to latch onto you to attack you for this or that reason, and that's why that happens. And it's the same kind of Shark Tank mentality that exists today, and it's wrong. And it's especially wrong if it happens, frankly, among conservatives, because we know that there is a larger enemy out there that wants to destroy civilization. And we can't destroy each other in the meantime. Now I'll get back to Avi. Now, guys, what happened very recently was Avi wanted to come to the United States of America and do some shows on Comedy Central and other places, and he wanted to expose fake news in the United States of America. A great thing, right? We're talking about almost Project Veritas stuff here, okay? Which I very much admire, Project Veritas. So he gets into he flies in from Australia, which is not, not a short flight, let me tell you. And he lands at LAX, and he's immediately met by the FBI, who bring him in and question him and everything, and ask him what he's doing there. And they actually asked him if he was planning on getting weapons in the United States and doing anything, and he said, okay, the only weapon I've got is my camera and my microphone. That's all I've got. That's my biggest weapon right there. The FBI cleared him, and yet he was deported. He was not allowed to stay in the United States. He was deported because about 15 years ago, and no, I don't know the reason for this, he was denied entry into the United States, and he made the honest mistake this time when he filled out the form of checking the box, have you ever been denied a visa or entry into the United States? And he checked the box no. Of course, he should have checked yes, but again, it's an honest mistake. I'm sure everybody out there has made a mistake like that on some government form or other. In fact, when I get government forms, I go down to the office and let them fill it out because of my vision, and also because I don't want mistakes like that made. At any rate, they deported Avi for that reason, and they said he could come back into the United States after he applied for a new visa, and they put him back on the same visa program, which Kaiser knows about. And we'll see what happens. The complainant in this, though, the people that got hold of the FBI were Comedy Central, who said that he was making threats to Jim Jeffries. And remember, guys, the FBI cleared him. They said, okay, yeah, you're obviously not a threat, so you can go on to Customs and Immigration. And that's where they got him. Now, we'll see what happens, Kaiser. If this is okay and everything, all he has to do is apply for another visa, and then he can come back in.
Yeah, no.
But if not.
What he came in with was a visa waiver. I know
Right.
what happened.
Mm-hmm.
He came in legit. They ran him on text. They found out that, yeah, he was denied entry one time. And it is think about every form because of how many questions you answer. And that's something I hope our president, everything needs, it was one of the Ross Perot talking points.
Right. Yeah.
Where it should be the size of a postcard.
Simplified forms.
Simplified forms. Yeah, brother. And don't call me sir. I hate sir because, anyways, it is.
That's all good.
It's a thing, a military thing. But the thing about, and I didn't mean it to sound dicky either. It sounded dicky to me. Anyways, but every form should be a couple questions where you denied a visa.
Yeah.
But they put so many questions there that you get into no, yes, no, whatever. And same with the ATF forms, which are ridiculous. And we are now burning on 1 hour and 43 minutes of epic conversations that we need to delve deeper in. This is going to probably be one of my highest rated shows. Because I love being pushed back against on, and I also love free speech, as you do.
Oh, yeah, man.
And, people will talk all the shit they want, but Adam Kokesh, people wanted to know about him. And I talked to the gentleman. And I'm talking to you, and notice I say gentleman. I don't say gentleman. I talk to the gentleman because that's where men need to go. Look, there is a time I am a warrior I am somebody that has done things for my country that none of you want to know about. And I've tried to expose things, and I will continue to do that. That's probably why I got shut down. But I will continue to have people like this on because I'm telling you, the unedited, that's what I like to call you, brother.
I've been called everything.
The unedited blind guy.
I've been called unedited, unscented. I like unscented. That's
that's a good one. Yeah, I like it too, man. I mean, it's about conversation. This is what I say. Without these conversations, guess what? We're in the predicament we're in now. And we had those conversations in the 80s. I'll never forget. First time before I ever, things happened. Well, I'm black. Okay, I don't care. You still have the thing that makes me able to do my thing. And you think with your dick when you're young.
Oh, of course.
But then there was a relationship built out of that. And a respect. And I think that's something we've lost too, is respect. Honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know your thoughts on it, but anyways, brother, I want to have you back as soon as I can.
Okay.
If it's weekly, whatever, I know you're going on vacation. Go enjoy that.
I certainly am. Yo, you better believe it.
I got him the day before he's going on vacation, folks.
Well, actually, I'm going on vacation another week. Now, let's try and keep this under 2 hours, Kaiser, but I did want to touch on one other thing, and I know that you wanted me to as well.
Cool.
Next week, this is going to be at Spreaker.com. It'll be at midnight Eastern. My show times, by the way, are 1 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And I put out new shows at midnight on Saturdays. And you can find me at Spreaker.com, of course, and also on YouTube under the SHR Media page and on the Western Free Radio Network. Saturday at midnight. After I finish this run of my 6th anniversary show, I'm going to be putting on a thing that I do yearly called The Way Back. This is the most important thing I've ever done. In fact, who knows? It may be why God steered me to doing a show in the first place. It is about how we win, even if we lose. It is a way that the American ideals, the American philosophy of American philosophies of self-rule and personal liberty can be carried over through time. It is a way to prepare. It is preservation of our documents, preservation of our writings, things like the Declaration of Independence, analyses of that, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, more importantly, the Anti-Federalist Papers, things of that nature. And it is preparing them and making a couple of copies of them, one to teach with, one to teach the generations with, no matter who takes over in government, it doesn't matter. And one to have for that day when the next American Republic will rise again, because we've already had two major republics in recorded history, the Roman Republic, and then we had the American Republic. We still have for now, and ours corrected some of the mistakes of the Roman Republic. The next one will correct some of the mistakes we've made with this one. And it is a way that we can win, even if this takes place 1,000 years from now or more. Remember that the space of time between the Roman Republic and ours was 1,800 years. It doesn't matter who wins temporarily. It's only a temporary win. Because in the end, guys, this is the main message of that, is that we win in the end. And I'm not just talking about my Christian belief, seeing the back of the book and knowing we win that way. This is a secular thing, too. We win this way as well. It doesn't matter who takes over. Some generation down the road can have the blueprints, the things they need to bring up the next American Republic. And this one isn't about me. It's about them. people I don't even know.
I agree with you, except for one thing. Two things actually. We had the Greek Republic,
Yeah, shortly.
so there's three. Yeah, there's three republics, and then the last thing is I tell people, if you're an American, the only way to continue your line
Mm-hmm.
is from DNA. Remember,
Oh yeah,
that is the most important part, is because your line will know. I know my line all the way back from Maria Theresa.
mm-hmm.
You folks need to understand your line, where
Mm-hmm.
you come from. Don't smite it, and maintain it, because that's a precious thing. Your DNA is the best thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that institutional memory is only passed through family lines.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, Kaiser. Right there. That's
Yep.
another part of it. Not preserve not only our documents and our philosophies, but get out there, get busy, have a lot of fun, and then teach that generation and tell them to pass it on.
That is epic, brother. Anyways, I'm going to play the outro. I'll talk to you offline here in a second.
All right.
And as always, Axion Ghost. Link will be in the description. I will get links in the description. It's different now since it's not live stream, but I will put it up as soon as I know it posted on YouTube, and it will be on BitChute too. Um, I will tell you guys everything about this, but the interesting part to me is I was able to bring you a gentleman that actually knows, good stuff. You're going to enjoy it. And Axion Ghost, my outro is about to start right now, and it's inside enemy headquarters. And here you go. God bless, be well, be safe. Thank you for sitting on my big orange couch, drinking your tea, drinking your coffee, drinking adult libation, if that's what you want to do. You're all welcome in Kaiser's Castle. And I mean that. God bless, be well, be safe. Chef out.